What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We are going to be talking state of the Badgers. But before we get there, make sure to like, follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit all those things, comment. And of course, if you want to hit me at my email address, big10footballtalk@gmail.com. But without further ado, we have Rajeev from the Bucky Report talking all things Badgers. Rajeev, how we doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's always fun to be on and talking about Badgers with anyone. So this is great. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Well, and you guys, there's a lot of hype coming into the season. Of course, my listeners know I'm a huge Buckeye. So I'm a big Luke Fickell guy. And I'm sure you guys are excited about having Luke Fickell. Before we talk about football, though, how did you become essentially a voice of the Badgers?
Yeah, so I actually started just kind of going on to another show, Locked On Badgers. It's another show that I regularly contribute to, host Ryan Herrings. I just joined on and I just kind of kept going on week after week to just talk about the game and lend my take a little bit. And then that just kind of grew from there. So now I was a contributor on there for a while. Then the other guy that's on there with me, Justin Julka, we started our own Bucky Report. So we still do Locked On Badgers. We kind of do both. And yeah, we started it in the fall of last year and it's been great.
Very fun. And of course, you are part of the College Huddle community as well. And we'll both be on the Big Ten Huddle later this week. So we're going to have some crossover quite a bit, at least this week and probably going forward as well. So you're on two podcasts. You also went to University of Wisconsin. When did you go and when did you graduate?
Yeah, so 99 to 04. I was there for 5 years. So that right around the time that, like my freshman year was Ron Dane breaking the record and us going to the Rose Bowl. And so it's been really good. But yeah, I've been a diehard Badger ever since 1999. So it's been a lot of fun.
So you were probably at the game where Lee Evans derailed Ohio State's repeat bid.
I certainly was, and it was absolutely one of the best atmospheres and experiences of my entire Wisconsin fandom. Yeah, I mean, there's been some low points, but there have been some really high points, and that was certainly one of them.
Everybody knows I'm an Ohio State fan, but just from an objective standpoint, getting that jump around atmosphere and then seeing Lee Evans with the backup quarterback coming in, one of the best moments, I think. One of the best upsets probably in the past 20, 25 years. And it just happened to be against my Buckeyes. So I'm not bitter, not at all.
I don't blame you. It's okay. But you guys have plenty to be happy about. So
it's true. It's true. Well, maybe we'll get started. So I've been trying to talk, Rajeev, with others about not just the state of where programs are now, but to give listeners kind of a sense of where you've been. And I feel like Wisconsin has kind of been a carbon copy up until the firing of Paul Chryst and the hiring of Luke Fickell. And I think when we heard that Paul Chryst was fired, it felt like it signaled this massive shift within the program's philosophy. Was that firing shocking to you? Or did you and the fan base kind of feel like that was the right move? And what did it signal to you?
Yeah, it was definitely the right move. Look, Paul Chryst did a great thing for our program. It all started in the mid-'90s when Barry Alvarez kind of took over, and that's really what made the Badgers what they are today. We went to several Rose Bowls. We've really been a top 25 team basically for the last, 20, 30 years. So that was kind of the start. And Paul Chryst was really an extension of that. And everything along the way, even the Brett Bielema days, we're all an extension of that piece of it. But Paul Chryst just didn't modernize our program. And that's really what it came down to. Obviously, everyone knows Wisconsin is a running team and a high defense team. We've had great seasons. We've had pops where we were close to the playoff. We finished 5th and 6th. We had great seasons. But at the last couple of years, at the beginning of the NIL era, Paul Chryst really couldn't modernize anything about the program. So we did need that change. And when he got fired, that was pretty much at a low point that we've ever really seen. That Illinois game at home, when we just got battered by Illinois, and you don't get battered by Illinois. And if you do, someone's losing their job. No offense to Illinois. That's just where the program is. So that was very expected at the time. We were calling for it. We wanted to see it happen. Jim Leonard took over, and then there was a question about who could come in. But yeah, we're very happy with Fickell. It's amazing. But we did need that change. And what it signaled to us is that the new athletic director, Chris McIntosh, is elevating the program to something it hasn't been. We've always been that top 25 team, that third or fourth best team in the Big Ten that really couldn't break into the top, the Michigan, Ohio State level. That's obviously what every Big Ten team wants. And now it's like, okay, we've done this for, almost 30 years. We've been this program that's been really good and strong. How can we be the next level better? And that's why you had to go away from Paul Chryst and that entire style and bring in Luke Fickell, who brings in a whole new recruiting philosophy, changes the type and profile of player they were looking for, and really elevates the program. So yeah, Badger fans, for the most part, there are a few that wanted Paul Chryst to stay, but by and large, we are very happy with the state of the program because we know Luke Fickell has that pedigree to bring championships.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in a lot of ways, there's kind of this. You're going to see, I think, over the next 5 years, there's Wisconsin, who I think has said we need to embrace the modern era and move in that direction, and then there's the old faithful Iowa Hawkeyes and Kirk Ferentz, who, yes, they got rid of Brian Ferentz, but is kind of said, hey, we're Iowa football, and this is how we're going to be. It's going to be interesting to see how those two programs track. Luke Fickell obviously came with a ton of fanfare. I was surprised and elated that he came to Wisconsin. They did go 7-6 a year ago. How will Fickell and his staff build upon last season, do you think?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot to build on. And remember, that wasn't Luke Fickell's players. And while there were some really bad parts of that first season, losing to Northwestern and Indiana, which was really the low point, which, again, you just don't do if you're going to be a good team in the conference. But there was a lot of good that we saw too. And the good is coming in the form of recruiting and the transfer portal and bringing in the athletes and the coordinators that will change the Wisconsin offense. Phil Longo is a whole different, I mean, we've never been an air raid offense, obviously. And now we have that ability. We've got the guy in there. Now we've got to bring in the quarterback, and we've got to bring in other players. So there's really a lot that can kind of be built on there. And, we just, Badger fans have that belief that things can be entirely different. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing it. And so, yeah, it's going to take time, and it needs to have results, but no one was really upset about I mean, there were people that were really, but of course we're upset. We went 7-5 in the regular season. We lost the bowl game, but there's signs, and this is not a 1 or 2 year project. This is going to be, we're building a foundation for the future of our program and taking it to the next level. I've said on my show many times, it's a little bit of a homer talk, but look, I think we could be the next Clemson, right? The team that was kind of perennially where they were. And then all of a sudden, excuse me, Dabo Swinney vaulted them into the national spotlight, to the national championship. And now they're a team that's considered, they're going to be upper echelon for as long as they're there. And we want that, right? It can't just be Michigan and Ohio State and the occasional Penn State rise. We've always been in that second, third tier, and we need to elevate. And I think that's where this can go. So, and by the way, and also when and how they're doing it, the transfer portal. We had a great transfer portal, and you're already seeing these athletes making their way to, excuse me, to Madison, and that's why we believe that change is really there.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those transfer portal additions and recruiting in a few minutes, but obviously the big name in that transfer portal is Tyler Van Dyke, highly coveted transfer from Miami. How much of an upgrade is he to Tanner Mordecai, and where do you think his upside is as he comes into this program?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really say that it's much of an upgrade from Tanner Mordecai. I think that the upside certainly is an upgrade, because Tanner didn't really have that upside, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I just feel like we had a lot of hype about Tanner Mordecai. His numbers at SMU were ridiculous. So when he came to Madison, we were like, okay, Luke Fickell's first season, we got this guy. It didn't end up materializing to be what it is. The thing is, and Tanner Mordecai isn't a very good deep ball thrower. That became apparent very early on in his time in Madison. We had a strong receiver room, but they had a lot of drops. They were underperforming. They weren't really getting separation. So we didn't really see what Tanner Mordecai could have been. And then he hurt his hand, and he had to go out for several weeks. And then we had Braden Locke come in. So Tyler Van Dyke, though, kind of a lot of the same, like has had really good seasons. He had one great redshirt freshman season at Miami. Since then, his numbers have tailed down a little bit, but he's still a solid, quarterback. And with the receiving room that we have, there's bigger upside for Tyler Van Dyke. Now, he also has that deep ball ability. So we've got the guys in Will Pauling and Bryson Green that can really get deep and can open up the field a little bit. So that's good. And we've got a good young freshman core of receivers coming in as well. But Tyler Van Dyke's issue potentially could be his turnovers. His decision-making at times is a bit, questionable. So how he folds into Phil Longo's system, and if he can, that really, the upside could be really, really good for him. And, we'll see how it works. But I know Badger fans are confident that in the 1 year that we're going to have him, he could maybe actually do something and make something happen. Now, behind him, we still got Braden Locke, who came in last year from Mordecai. He's young. We've got another freshman that came in. So I feel like our quarterback room is in a good spot. But Van Dyke could absolutely take us to great heights this year if he has a season like his redshirt freshman year, or he could turn the ball over early a lot, and then Badger fans are looking for Braden Locke to come in. So it's a real big question mark. It's the one quarterback could be great, and it could be, it's the X factor, right? No one really knows what we're getting and which Tyler Van Dyke we're going to get, but hopefully, we get redshirt freshman Tyler Van Dyke, and we've got a good enough group around him that he should be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think even with that, it sounds like it gives Braden Locke some time to really continue to mature as well and learn the system. And so that even if, maybe Van Dyke is straight down the middle, like he's not the upgrade, but maybe he's not, the turnover machine. He kind of steadies the ship, and then Braden Locke can take over in a year, it sounds like.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the other thing is the pieces around him have gotten better, right? So the offensive line is pretty much all coming back except our center, which is okay because the new center's, was injured last year, but could have played and would have maybe potentially been the starter there. And the receivers are obviously good. We've got some more through the transfer portal, but the defense should be improved. And so that automatically means that Tyler Van Dyke's job can get a lot easier because, our defense last year was very sporadic. We definitely were not the rush defense that we've always been. And our linebackers were frankly just a little bit slow. And, anytime anyone tried to run to the outside, Ohio State did it several times in the game against us. And we didn't have the outside linebacker speed to get that done. Well, now that with the transfer portal, we've done that. So I feel like that also makes his job easier. If he is just that game management type, like that's okay, right? Just don't turn the ball over. Get the ball into the hands of the guys that can make plays. We've got running backs behind him. So we're going to be in a good spot as long as he just doesn't turn the ball over.
Yep. And throwing the ball to Will Pauling is always a good idea.
Oh, it sure is. He has been such a great guy. I mean, we're really set in the slot because with Pauling there and now with our freshman Trech Kakahuna, we're really, really excited about that guy, and he's going to get some minutes this year for sure. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, and I think we're setting Van Dyke up to be successful. Let's see if he can actually make it happen.
Yeah. Well, and you've talked about players coming in. The past two recruiting classes have really looked good. I think 23rd in the composite for 2024, and I think they're up to 12 in this year's cycle. And it's not just a lot of recruits. It's some high 4-star recruits. Talk about the momentum that they're gaining with that.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch as a Badger fan, no doubt. Fickell came in last year and really got that momentum started, right? You said the 23rd to 23 in the composite. It was a solid class. And this year, though, what you're seeing is a new style of recruiting. So we never were a program that would really go out and get cornerbacks to the level that we're getting now. And we just got Xavier Lucas out of Florida last year. And we've got guys this year like Rakeem Stroud. And there's so many cornerbacks when you look down this staff because Fickell runs a different kind of defense. He runs more of that 3-3-5, 2-4-5. High level of responsibility for the defensive backfield, and that's what's happening. And the other thing is he's selling the program. So we're going to get, like right now we're 12th this year in the composite, 5th on Rivals right now. Now we'll drop a little bit because we do have 19 already, and a lot of schools don't have that. So they're going to jump us probably in the rankings. But I absolutely expect us to be a top 15 class this year. Now the Paul Chryst years, That wasn't the case, right? We were sometimes 45th, 46th. We had the top 20s at times, 22, 23, but we were never that program that was in the top 15. And that's what you have to do if you're going to start to compete with the teams like your team or Michigan and Penn State, even for that matter. And they're a team that I think outranks us a lot. But we're catching that. The staff is doing a great job. We actually have a very great recruiting department, and the assistant coaches have been amazing. I mean, guys like our new offensive line coach, AJ Blazek, and Paul Haynes, who's in our defensive backs, and Mitchell, linebackers. We're just getting them all across the board. And we've always been a team that is a 3-star developmental program, and that's fine. We're not going to get the 5 stars that you guys are going to get. But if we can sprinkle in the 4s, and we had a lot last year, and now this season we're currently right now we've got 6 in the composite, but there are some more going to be elevated to 4. And yeah, those numbers are going to continue to increase. And that's the lifeblood of college football. You've got to have the recruiting. And not only that, you've got to build through the transfer portal. And he's doing both. So the recruiting classes have been really, really strong. We just got Eugene Hilton, T.Y. Hilton's son from Indianapolis, Mason Posa, the linebacker out of New Mexico. And these guys are 4-star talents that really bring in a new profile of player, which is high athleticism, high motor, high levels of aggression. That's what you got to do if you're going to play for Luke Fickell. And I mean, look at what he did to Cincinnati. He took Cincinnati to the college football playoff. That's ridiculous. I mean, no one's doing that. And now you bring in the Wisconsin machine and what we've done for 25 years, and you add Luke Fickell's touch to that and the recruiting that they're doing. There's a lot of signs that the program's going in the right direction, and it starts right here with recruiting, and it's happening. And I think this class will finish in the top 15, and we'll see what the future can bring.
I think something that encourages me as you're talking, Rajeev, is that I always get hesitant when people start talking, we need to recruit better, because you almost at times lose who you are when you start to think that way. And it sounds like what you're saying is Luke Fickell knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly who Wisconsin is. And I don't think Wisconsin will ever get rid of the blue collar, hard nosed running the football, even with the air raid. And yet he's like, we're going to change styles, but we're not going to change who we are in the sense of our mentality. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Totally. Absolutely. And you're right. Wisconsin has to still run the ball. We always talk about that. We want that. That is our culture, because we have amazing offensive linemen that grow up in the state of Wisconsin, and that is who we are, and we have to keep that, because if you change it too much, things are going to be different. But you have to evolve. And our offense wasn't evolved earlier. I mean, it wasn't happening. So you've got to have the quarterback, you've got to have the wide receiver talent, because that's what it takes to win in this game. I mean, you certainly know we've gotten crushed some years by Ohio State. No matter how good we are, Ohio State tends to thump us on the field, and it's embarrassing. But when you look at what Ohio State does, they can run the ball too. They have those powerful players. They can air it out and they can make those changes. So he's recruiting to that new sort of identity that we are still keeping our roots and the foundations as a program, but modernizing it. And that's exactly what Paul Chryst couldn't do. And it's exactly what Luke Fickell is doing. And he definitely knows what he wants. And Mike Tressel, our defense coordinator, and Phil Longo, the guy that he got out of North Carolina, I mean, they are a great team, and what's building is something super special. And that's, so yeah, we all believe in what Luke Fickell's doing. And we're at that point now where you can really see that identity changing. But it's not to the point where we're just going to go crazy and be totally different. No, we're just changing our foundation and putting a modern spin on it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you talked about the corners, because the first person I immediately thought of was Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, if you're going to go to a program to be a corner, go where he developed, Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner. And I don't know what they were as recruits, but I'm sure at best they were probably low 4-star, high 3, and become, for Sauce Gardner, the number 4 pick in the draft. And that, you have that cachet. You can tell people you're coaching in the Big Ten, and you need those corners in this day and age. Like, you need against receivers like a Marvin Harrison, a Emeka Egbuka, the guys that Oregon is bringing in, Evan Stewart, and the guys that USC is bringing in. You're gonna need those guys to defend against the perimeter. And so I love how you're showcasing for us and essentially telling the listeners this is how Wisconsin is modernizing, and it's going to be a hard road for anybody who goes up against the Badgers.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, he absolutely is using that. Like Sauce Gardner, just know that name. Everybody knows what Sauce Gardner did in Cincinnati. And that's exactly what's happening. And you know, with the talent that we brought in, Emilio Agard and Rakeem Stroud this year, and Xavier Lucas, like there's a lot of talent, and the room is filling up quickly. And the one thing Badger fans have been saying for the last couple of weeks through official visits is, yeah, cornerbacks we're fine there, and we're going to continue growing. And that is not some, yeah, we've had the occasional guy like a Jamar Fletcher back in the day, and we've had some really great spots years with good cornerbacks. But for the most part, we're not a school that develops and turns out NFL talent at cornerbacks.
Yeah.
And now we can do that. And you're absolutely right about the receivers. I mean, Marvin Harrison, as you obviously know, I thought he was the best player in the country last year. I thought he should have won the Heisman. I thought, I think he's absolutely incredible. I'm also a Colts fan, as you can see behind me. So his dad was certainly someone who I loved. But you absolutely have to have those good cornerbacks to play. And if you can't stop a team like Ohio State, which year after year, it's been proven that we can't stop Ohio State. Well, this is basically Luke Fickell saying, I know what we need to do. We're not as good as them. We're never going to be as good of a program as them, but we have to have this kind of a change in order to stop those programs. And that's exactly what he's doing. And meanwhile, we're recruiting linebackers like they're going out of style. We have such a good linebacker room after getting torched last year in the run game because we didn't have the linebacker talent. So he's building that side of it too. And it's understanding, that we need that speed at that position, that those guys can flex. They can be versatile guys. They can step back in coverage and then also rush the passer. Defensive line is still an area that we need to really grow in. But yeah, like all that identity changes, and the need for cornerbacks is bigger than ever. And you hit the nail on the head. That's how we're going to be better.
Yeah. Well, you guys are going to have to test out the kind of this upgraded talent early. You guys have Western Michigan and South Dakota, should be 2-0. And then the Crimson Tide rolls up on your doorstep, and then you travel to USC. At least from a program standpoint, I don't know if you can get two bigger names outside of, who's already in the Big Ten. And obviously USC coming to the Big Ten. As you look at this schedule, where do you think Wisconsin, like what's their ceiling and what's their floor?
Yeah. So we did a talk like this on our show recently. I'm an optimist, and I'm an eternal optimist. So I'm always going to have a really high ceiling just because I think that lightning can always strike and things can happen that really work in your favor. I think our floor, and I think it's 6-6, and that's not a typical a great floor for a Wisconsin team. But given the schedule that we have, and Alabama, and of course, as you mentioned, USC, and we've got Oregon and Penn State, and look, it's tough, but I think 6-6 is the floor. The ceiling for me is 11-1, but I got ridiculed for saying that only because, I think that the ceiling is everything being right.
Yes.
It means that the redshirt freshman Tyler Van Dyke that played at Miami, that's the quarterback that we get. And he's connecting with guys like Pauling and Bryson Green and Trechka Kahuna and Vinny Anthony, all these guys. And Ches Malusi doesn't get hurt, which he's had such horrible freak injuries, and he stays healthy. And him and Tawi Walker and all the defensive guys were really hit. So, and I'll tell you, and the reason I said 11-1, which most people in the Badger community are saying 9-3, 10-2 is a really max end of the ceiling. If you look at our schedule, if you look at those, the hardest games that we have to play, those games are at home. Okay. So, I mean, not USC, and I'm not putting USC in that upper echelon because I do feel like, Alabama and Oregon both being in Madison is a big thing for us. Yeah. We have a good home field advantage. Sadly, the Alabama game is a noon Eastern kickoff, which I think is awful. And we were really upset about that. I'm like, come on, give us something. So, I think that's why the ceiling is there, only because if you look at our road slate, it's not the most difficult road slate, but at home we've got some of those big games. Now, I don't think we're going to go 11-1. I think the realistic area is 9-3 would be super successful. That would be a good successful season for Luke Fickell. 8-4 probably. That's the kind of the range we're going to end up. But hey, man, Zach, anything can happen. I mean, we can
Yeah.
absolutely be a team that beats Alabama at home, beats Oregon at home, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a record that could potentially get close to 11-1. So I definitely am a little bit on the optimistic side there. Most Badger fans will tell you 10-2 is their ceiling, but I think anything can happen.
Well, and it's interesting because I thought out of all the bowl games, I thought Wisconsin was going to get shellacked by LSU, and they should have won. They should have beat the Tigers,
Absolutely
and
should have won.
and if they can compete like they did against LSU, like Alabama has questions, right? I would favor Alabama, but they have question marks. As much as I think Oregon is going to be a top 4 team in the country, you know, I don't know if their defense is going to be the best defense. Um, on the flip side, it's interesting because I think teams like Purdue and Rutgers and Nebraska are all on the rise, and so I'm with you. I think it could be 6-6. It would not shock me because it's Luke Fickell, because of the talent infusion, if they could get to 11-1 because I think that's part of the beauty of this season is a lot of teams that we're expecting to be great, they have holes. Like Penn State's another one. Penn State, I think I think they could be the best team in the conference, but I need to see it before I can declare them that. Like there's a lot of questions around Aller, there's a lot of questions around Singleton and Katrin Allen and their defense, but like they could be, or they could get upset at Camp Randall. So I appreciate your perspective because I think it it is understanding the reality that even the best teams, they have some question marks, and the way Wisconsin's building their team, they have enough to get anybody.
That's a great point. They have enough to get everybody. They also can lose to almost anybody, as evidenced by last year, some of our games we've had. But yeah, when you look at the schedule, obviously USC is going to be a really tough road game. That's and who knows? But listen, USC is not the USC that they're not they're at the top of their game either. So
Right.
who knows what you're really getting in USC? We're always going to struggle with Iowa because Wisconsin Iowa is a rivalry that they've been getting the best of us lately. They have that amazing defense they have every year. No one can seem to stop that. But offensively, they're pretty weak. Last year they got us. This year, I think we get them. But that's a road game. Nebraska, as you mentioned, a team that's really on the rise. I don't necessarily believe in what they're building. I think the hype is a little bit high on Nebraska, but we'll see. I mean, that's obviously me also having some wishful thinking there, but that's gonna be a tough road game. And then but with Oregon at home, Penn State at home, and of course Alabama, anything can happen. So you're right though. 6-6 is very in. I mean, that can absolutely happen given what we've got here, but that would also mean that probably Braden Locke is coming in to take Tyler Van Dyke's place because maybe he's injured or he's
Mhm.
not the guy that we expected him to be. And the defense isn't molding like we expect them to. But I can tell you one thing, and a lot of people that don't watch the Badgers or following this transfer class, recruiting class, see this. The defense is going to be vastly improved. There's so much more speed at that linebacking core. The question mark is defensive line. So if then some of the new guys and some of the transfer portal guys can impact that position and they're okay, we should be fine. But the defense definitely is going to be improved, and that's going to surprise people because we're a historical great defense, but the last year we really weren't. And then if they're back, anything can really happen.
Yeah. One of the last games, or the last game on your schedule, it was just announced that it was moved to a Friday, which I know is not a popular decision, especially because it's a big rivalry. Is Wisconsin, Minnesota, the battle for the axe? This is me as an Ohio State fan. It is the best rivalry trophy, easily the best rivalry trophy. Like it's not even a question. And I'm gonna get hate for it, and I don't care. It's amazing because you're winning an axe. But as you look like you're going to jump in here, Rajeev.
I just feel like it's so funny because you're right. There's not even no other trophy is as cool as an axe. I'm sorry, there's not. There's not
Right.
not a pig or not a bucket or not a spittoon, whatever. I mean, there's some crazy ones in the Big Ten. And yes, I completely agree. The axe is, I mean, it's an axe and it's huge, by the way.
Yeah, and if you're like, but we get a pig, it's like you could take the axe and you can kill a pig. That's
Yeah.
sorry, it's just undefeated. It's awesome.
Right.
Um, talk about the rivalries. I we had Kurt from the Sky U pod talking about Minnesota, which ironically, Minnesota and Wisconsin feel eerily similar in terms of transfer quarterback, really working the portal. I like Luke Fickell better than PJ Fleck, but that's another discussion for another time. But talk about the rivalries and talk about the traditions that maybe the common Big Ten fan doesn't know about.
Yeah. First of all, Minnesota. I mean, they're not in our league. I wanted to start there. Minnesota fans like to think that they're in our league, and they had us. They had a couple of years with the axe. It's fine, but I mean, listen, that program is nowhere near the levels of Wisconsin, and they are our most hated rival. And no Badger fan
Mm,
likes Minnesota. No Gopher fan likes us. It's all good, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, that rivalry is great, and it's historical. It's a great rivalry. They used to play for a slab of bacon, which is
mm.
interesting. Which I actually have one right here, the slab of bacon. So yeah, it's been great, and the axe, like you said, has been fantastic, and it's a cool rivalry. And they used to run across the field to get it, which was awesome because they actually would run to the opponent's team's bench, storm their bench, jump over the bench, and grab the axe. Now, because that caused some issues, they put it in the end zone and they don't let the players get anywhere near it. But yeah, I mean, that's been difficult for us. Like when we lose to Minnesota, which we've lost to Minnesota a couple times recently, that's never fun. And they had bragging rights, and they did, and that's fair. But that team, I've been PJ Fleck. I tell you, I have many opinions on PJ Fleck, and none of them are good. So, and that's fine for the Minnesota fans listening. That's okay because that rivalry is always going to be there. Another rivalry we have is with Iowa. Those are the two teams that we pretty much always play, and they're sort of our protected rivals. And Iowa and Wisconsin play for a trophy that just started actually, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, like the actual trophy thing. And we didn't play for a trophy for a long time. And but yeah, that's a game that always really is hyped up for Badger fans. And I mean, there's really no one else. It's like a hardcore rivalry. We certainly have had great games in the past with teams like Michigan and even Ohio State and Penn State, but Iowa and Minnesota are really our rivals. And of course, the biggest tradition of all in Wisconsin is jump around, which has been great. And it's been around for almost, I guess, 26 years now.
Yeah.
And that's super fun. And that's something that everyone knows. That's one of our biggest traditions.
How do you know how that started? How jump around started?
Yeah, so it started actually right. So I got to Madison in the fall of '99. The season before that, the fall of '98, when we were playing Purdue, they just played that song like right between the third and fourth quarter as just like just a playlist that one of the guys who ran the music had on his whatever, it's playlist. And the crowd just went crazy for it just because the
Mm,
start of that song, House of Pain Have is just like, like those big trumpets, it's a big deal right when it starts. And it just kind of, it got the crowd all excited. And then my freshman year, it was the first full season that we had it. And yeah, they just played between the third and fourth quarter. And once they played it once, it just stuck. Then they stopped it for a very short bit because they didn't like it. They didn't think it was like safe or whatever it was. And then the stadium kind of moves. It's fine. And they brought it right back because people were going crazy for it. And
mm,
yeah, and it's been around ever since. And it's just become such a thing that you can't watch a Badger game. And right between the third and fourth quarter, they're always going to show it. They always come back from commercial, showing the crowd going
yeah.
crazy. It's super fun to be in the student section during that because yeah, I mean you can feel the stadium shake a little bit, and the whole place looks electric. It used to just be the student section when I was in school. It was just the student section. Now it's pretty much the entire stadium. The student
Yeah.
section, of course, is the central focal point, but the entire place just rocks, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great tradition. Every time you go to away games, sometimes if they play it, it goes nuts. Or anytime any event that's there, especially in Wisconsin, if you hear jump around, people just go crazy for it. So it's a lot of fun.
That's really cool. That's really fun. I it's fun too that it's a tradition that really you kind of I mean, you didn't personally start it, but you got to be a part of the origin of it, which
Yeah.
is really fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, like I said, my first year was it was technically the second season they had it, but it was the first full season that they had it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was really cool, and it wasn't nationally known at the time. So when you
Mm,
watched games, they weren't really talking about it that much. But then people started to realize what it was. And now, I mean, now a lot of schools will do things like I think Purdue does like shout or something between the third and fourth
mm,
quarter. Schools have something now, but I feel like we were really the first one to do it
yeah.
at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And the one of the cool things is that away fans love it too. I mean,
Yep.
when they come to Madison, they go crazy for it. Away players, you see them down on the field jumping up and down, and
Yep.
it's something that's fun for opposing fans too, which I think is cool. And I'm glad that they embrace it.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really fun. I was told we're gonna start wrapping up here, but I was told by Eric of the OHIO pod to ask about the culture surrounding frozen pizza in Wisconsin. So I don't know if you know anything about this, but he told me I had to ask about this. So I am. I'm asking you, what's the deal about frozen pizza?
Yeah, it's kind of a relatively new thing. It's not, I feel like it's not, there's a store called Woodman's that's in Madison that has like aisles and aisles of frozen pizzas. And there are a lot of companies like Tombstone and stuff that are started in Wisconsin.
Mm,
Look, when I was there, I feel like it wasn't a big thing. It was a thing that any college campus has. But yeah, I mean, it is sort of become a narrative that I think is probably a little bit overblown, but I don't live in Madison anymore. I can't really say what that's like, but you do know about it, you do hear about it, and sure, there's a lot of things based there, and there's a lot of selections at this particular store, which they're known for, among other things. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things in Madison, but this frozen pizza thing is probably a little bit overblown. Now, again, I don't live in Madison anymore. I haven't lived there for several years, so someone who's there now might feel differently. But as a guy that was there in the early 2000s, it's just not something that comes to mind first when you think of Madison.
that that's fair, and we'll get to what is there in Madison. But you have had to have had at least one frozen pizza in your time at
Of
Madison.
course, many,
Well,
several.
yeah, several. So what's your go-to then?
My go-to's always kind of been DiGiorno. I've
Uh,
always liked that. That's just always been my favorite kind. And I know it's not relatively new. It's been around a long time, but once that popped, it was good. Or Totino's pizza, like the old school party pizzas.
oh, the party
Love those
pizzas.
too. Love those.
Yeah.
Those have always been good.
We had a friend, he's actually he'll probably end up listening to this. So Chris Ebersol, if you're listening, this is for you. Probably about 5 years ago, my I'm married with 3 kids, and my friend Chris, who works with us, he lived with us for about 4 or 5 months, and it felt like reliving college for a little bit because we get home from campus, uh, doing ministry together, and we would pop into Tino's Pizza Rolls, and we would play college football. And I remember my dad was visiting at the time, and here I am. I think 32 or 33 at the time, and my dad visited us, and the first thing he saw was me and my friend Chris, just snacking on Totino's Pizza Rolls and playing NCAA football, and he's like, "What in the world?" So
That
that's
sounds
the
great,
last.
by the way. That's
It was
perfect.
it was fantastic, except my body can't handle Totino's Pizza Rolls anymore. It's not a good thing. Madison and Wisconsin, obviously you haven't been there, you haven't lived there for a while, but what were some of the fun, like food and fun on campus that you remember there? And where would you direct like opposing fans if they were going to go to a game? Where would you direct them and what would you tell them to eat?
Yeah, so just go to State Street. There's every kind of thing you could ever want. State Street is a street that connects the campus to the Capitol. It's
Mhm.
about a mile and a half long, I think, and there's no vehicular traffic except emergency vehicles. So it's just a big pedestrian street. It's lined with bars and restaurants, and one of the more
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. It's great when you're on campus. You literally can be right by the Union, or not by the Union, by that like the library area, and then you can see straight down this street to the Capitol building, and it's just all lined with shops, bars, restaurants, everything. And it's great. So there's a lot of cool places there. State Street Brats is one of the more famous ones. The food isn't amazing, but it's one of the more ones that you always kind of go to when you're there. They do have good brats. Near Camp Randall Stadium, there's another sort of street full of bars and restaurants, where there's a lot of good pubs and stuff to go to before games. And then kind of around the corner there's a place called Mickey's Dairy Bar, which is the most famous sort of diner in Madison. Like pancakes, literally the size of your plate. And
Oh,
that's something that, like, on game day Saturdays, the line is out. Even honestly, any Saturday, the line's out the door to get a place in there. It's really hard to get a seat. It's very small. Everyone kind of sits around a bar, but it's very got that dinerish feel, which is good. And then there's another place near the this campus is basically sits on the isthmus, or close to the actual isthmus that goes between two lakes.
mm.
So that area, the isthmus area, that whole capital district, there's a place called Essen House, which is a German food place, which is great. They've
Oh.
got boots full of beer that you pass around, and the schnitzel and all that stuff. It's fantastic. I try to get back there every time I go to Madison. There's great bars around the Capitol Square, and Madison's a cool town. I mean, it's literally stuck between two lakes. And the Memorial
Mm.
Union, our union is awesome. It's something that's very kind of iconic in pictures of Madison, like these big, colorful chairs that had that line the Union Terrace, that goes over the lake. It's actually they sell beer in the Union. They've got their own
Mm.
Babcock ice cream. So we have a dairy school, of course, shocker, in Madison, and that they have their own ice creamery. So they make their own ice cream on campus. All the milk and dairy products on campus are from the dairy school, Babcock Hall.
Oh,
So when
so
I was
good.
when I was a freshman and going to like the food, the eatery, we would just have like the cafeteria would have like just Bucky Badger milk, right? And then all the ice cream is fantastic. So eat ice cream at the Memorial Union. That's something you got to do. And sit on the back patio with the colorful chairs. Check that out. And then walk State Street. You got it. State Street is one of the coolest things and very unique about Madison. It's something that you should do on Halloween every year. That's like the central focal point where
Mm.
students get dressed up and they literally just walk up and down this street drinking and obviously and having a great time. But that's an area you got to check out.
That's so cool. I love schools that have their own ag and, like, do their own dairy stuff. Like,
Yeah.
Penn State does that, and, I haven't had the guys from Nittany Blues on yet, but I know we'll talk about the creamery, and it sounds like I I want to get to Madison. I think that might be, like, the stadium I wanna get to, like, next. I haven't been to many, but I'm like, the atmosphere, but what you're just talking about, that mile and a half street and the state union, everything you just said, you've made me now I'm just very hungry.
Yeah. No, you should definitely do it. You definitely should. It's a really cool college town, and most people that I mean, it's not a huge city, which is nice, right? Now, obviously, Milwaukee's only an hour away,
Mhm.
but it's got a great feel and a really cool vibe.
Very cool. Very cool. Where can we find you, and your podcast, The Bucky Report?
Yeah, so we're at the Bucky Report on YouTube, and anywhere you can find your podcast, the Bucky Report. We're at the Bucky Report on Twitter. My Twitter's at Rajeev Badgers, and then Locked On Badgers, which is just Locked On Badgers on YouTube and wherever you can get your podcasts. Go check that out. Hosted by Ryan Herrings. Then I'm on there occasionally. So yeah, good stuff.
Very cool. And we will both be on the Big Ten Huddle tomorrow because this is airing Monday. We will be both on Tuesday night. So check that out as well. And of course, like, follow, subscribe here on the Big Ten Football Talk. Rajeev, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great. Appreciate
For
it.
sure. And for the rest of you, take care. God bless.